following preview was begrudgingly approved for all audiences.
You're listening to Elevator Music.
Welcome back to Forward Thinking, presented by the Professional Collegiate League. I'm Ricky Vellante, and I'll be joined by my co-host David West, as well as the PCL CMO Wendell Haskins in this episode, along with our special guest, Luther Campbell, better known as Uncle Luke. As you likely noticed, we took last week off so that those discussing and working towards addressing systemic racism and oppression, as well as civil rights violations and social injustice, could be the focus. This week, we're picking back up, talking with those that are challenging the status quo, doing social good, and bringing about positive change to the world, while also talking a little bit of sports. With Luke, we'll be discussing his work within youth sports, his involvement with the University of Miami football team, as well as comparing what's happening today following the death of George Floyd with what happened in 1980 in the Liberty City and Miami riots following the death of Arthur McDuffie. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Forward Thinking on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. You can also find more information at thepcleague.com/forwardthinking. All right, and welcome back to Forward Thinking. We're now joined by another special guest, Luther Campbell, better known as Uncle Luke, rapper, former leader of 2 Live Crew, also author. And Luke, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Tell us about yourself, introduction to our audience, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
I'm a guy from Miami. Started out in the music business as a DJ. I was a world famous DJ down here. I get not world famous, but a little town famous DJ. And I would bring down all types of hip hop artists from New York. Basically, wanted to bring hip hop artists from New York down to Miami to perform. And then I just went from there to open up a record label. I didn't really want to open up a record label. I wanted to be a promoter. But 2 Live Crew came down and they were complaining about, just like every other artist, they were complaining about their music, not getting paid for the music. And so I ended up, doing a deal with them, trying to get them a deal, actually. And then nobody wanted them. And I was just like, okay, I'll just put the music out myself. So I kind of did that, went from there to, before you know it, I'm in the music business. Fast forward to that, I'm in the Supreme Court fighting for free speech for hip hop, getting records banned, going to jail for the music business. And then, once at the same time, we were at the height of our career, I was kind of somewhat affiliated with UM football, where I saw young guys, doing the wrong thing on campus. And then I just started, hanging out with them and trying to get them focused on getting the education out of the deal. And that became a whole nother controversy also.
As an attorney, I guess I want to start off a little curious about the Supreme Court case specifically. I know 2 Live Crew, I believe you guys had the first ever parental advisory tag on one of your albums. And then, as you mentioned, using a parody of one of Orbison's songs, you guys ended up in the Supreme Court. How did that sort of activate you in the space of free speech? And then how did that potentially feed into you writing your book?
Well, the thing is, it was actually 2 cases going on. It was one case where it was the parody case, just like you say, when we fought against Roy Orbison, where the parody was protected by the First Amendment, which was a free speech case that ended up in the Supreme Court. We eventually won that case. But then you had another case where whether explicit lyrics were acceptable to the public, and we ended up losing that case originally. It got my record banned, and that's why I ended up coming up with the song Banned in the USA. We performed in Fort Lauderdale after federal judge Gonzalez deemed the record obscene, and I had to go back to court, and I ended up getting that overturned on an appeal, which was probably one of the most important appeals because just like if we would have left it, any other municipality could have used that case law against them to get all other hip hop artists' music to be banned if they had explicit lyrics. So I had to go back in, spend a bunch of money to get that overturned. But at the same time, I was having this fight against the Royal Orbison estate, where the parody was protected by the First Amendment, and both of the cases were very important, because if I'd have lost the parody case, then satire, what you see as what they do on Saturday Night Live, and then for most important, which everybody's using that case right now to argue about what's considered as intellectual property, which is what's going on now in today's in the internet world. So, I mean, in short, hopefully that's short. Those are two cases that I was fighting, and they were very, very important cases.
Now, those happened, I believe, both in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Prior to that, you mentioned you come from Miami, Liberty City specifically, and in your book, the Book of Luke, you've discussed some of your experiences and how that all shaped your activism, and particularly your experience around the death of Arthur McDuffie. So how did all that come together in terms of not only you finding your voice, but also sort of your purpose with some of the activist and social justice pursuits that you've done since?
When you're half Jamaican and half Bahamian like I am, politics is constantly talked about in the household. And when I was a kid, it was really about understanding your history. Martin Luther King, H. Rap Brown, Malcolm X, and you had to know your history in the house. So going into living in Liberty City and knowing the history, what my dad and my uncles would tell me, how they had to come up and the things that were happening with them. And then as I was coming up, you had the same thing that's going on right now today. I had police shoot Neville Johnson off a motorcycle, kill him. That was one riot. And then another riot was Arthur McDuffie, an insurance man coming home from work. They ended up beating him to death. And there was another big riot. And then after those two riots, me as a kid DJing in the park, we got like 1,000 kids at the park, and the police officer come, who was bullying everybody in the neighborhood, similar to the police officer that you had in Minneapolis. Came and said something stupid, and before you know it, we ended up having another riot. So I was a part of starting one riot and being a part of a whole bunch of other ones. And again, those were the days in Miami. And growing up in Miami was somewhat tough. It was similar to what you have on a Scarface movie. You had a big Cuban influx that came over, on the after Bay of Pigs. You had those guys coming over, and it was like all out chaos. I mean, you had big gangs down here. If you weren't a part of a gang, then at the end of the day, and the gangs, the difference in the gangs down here was about money. I used with a Cuban gang, cocaine cowboys or whatever, and it was all about money and all about drug trade. Everybody was selling drugs on every corner. The banks was involved. It was mad crazy, but people had a bunch of money down here. There was a lot of people getting killed.
Wow. How did that sort of shape Miami now? Because I know, I tell people all the time, like, and this is like a two-part piece. If you think about Florida, right, and you say, well, I'm going to Miami. People don't think of Florida as a part of Miami, right? Like Miami's that carved out piece. Yeah. But talk about the impact of, because I think I've heard you say this before, the police officers that police in Miami aren't from Miami. They come from different parts of Florida. And I don't think people really understand what Florida looks like outside of Miami sometimes.
You're correct. See, people have a tendency, most people from anywhere across the country, they think Miami is the country because we're in the South. But in all actuality, when you get from Fort Lauderdale on back, is basically a melting pot of Bahamians, Jamaicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, you name it.
Haitian.
Haitians, you name it. It's all types of island nationalities and in the town. So I mean, yeah, it's like a crazy melting pot of all different nationalities. But just like you say, when I was coming up as a kid, Miami Beach, what you see and what people, where we as people from Miami, and we see people come down, and the first thing they say is we're going to Miami Beach, and we look at it as, okay, you're a tourist, you're going to Miami Beach, you're not really coming to Miami to embrace real Miami. I mean, one of the biggest things that most people didn't even talk about was when LeBron said, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. That was like a shot in the face to every black person from Miami. You know, not even just black people, everybody from Miami, because we look at South Beach as like the tourist thing. That's where the tourists come. Most people think that is Miami, but in all actuality, that's not what we're all about, and that's not our culture over there. It's just, you know, something cosmetically made up for people who are coming from out of town to enjoy themselves.
Luke, talk a little bit about, you know, Liberty City. And, you know, when I came to see you speak on your book tour, you really gave some incredible background and history, and particularly about Black folks in Liberty City and how it developed and evolved. You know, you grew up there and certainly are Liberty City product. So just give us a little background about that, because I'm not sure that a lot of people know the history of Liberty City.
What people don't realize is that when blacks came to Miami, it was mostly Bahamians. Bahamians came, and it was Bahamians, and to answer David's question, when the Bahamians came, then the Bahamians were building up the town. Then they brought down police officers from Georgia, basically to tame the blacks, because it was just whites and it was Bahamians. Bahamians came in, and they basically was here to build the town. So you had more Bahamians coming in from Bahamas to build Miami up, because it was all a beach town. And then to control the Bahamians and the blacks, then they brought in these police officers from Georgia and everywhere else who were known racist police officers to control the blacks that was down here. And so most of Bahamians settled in as part of Miami called Coconut Grove. You know, if you know the Grove right now has shrunk the black community up, and now it's obviously it's condos and everything else. And then everybody else settled in Overtown, which is probably 5 blocks away from the arena, which is Overtown, which is now probably some of the prime property in the state of Florida, because blacks lived there. And we ended up in Overtown after we kind of got ran out of Coconut Grove. And so what they did with Overtown, they ran an expressway right in between the black community and Overtown. A little history on Overtown: blacks could not stay on South Beach overnight. You would have to be off the beach at 6 o'clock. That's where most of the entertainment was going on. So the black entertainers would go on South Beach, perform, and then they would have to be off the beach. And then they could not stay on the beach. They would have to stay in Overtown. Overtown had the hotels. It was kind of like a little party area for people, for the blacks. And then the blacks would then leave their little circuit tour. The black entertainers would then leave the next day and then go to Cuba, which is predominantly black. Most people don't understand that, with some of the most beautiful people in the world. So they would go to Cuba from there and entertain in Cuba, because Cuba was similar to what you see in the Bahamas right now. And that was during the time of the Batista days. So you had black Cubans and black people going back and forth to Cuba, like they would go to the Bahamas, because Cuba is really a black island. So you had those people transporting back and forth, and then at the same time, people wanted to regulate the area. I mean, like if you ride the beach and you see this island where Oprah and all them got houses, they call it Fisher Island.
Yeah.
Right on the right hand side before you get across the last bridge. That island was actually owned by a black man named D.L. Dorsey. And D.L. Dorsey was like the first black millionaire, because when the Bahamians came down, they bought up all those islands, and they eventually sold the islands to Fisher and all the other people like that. So it's a large, rich history of, it was just blacks and whites, and then, blacks pretty much got pushed out for the land, because the land, nobody claimed the land but the Bahamians and the African Americans that was here.
Luke, you also ran for political office not long ago, and I know, you're really politically active, and you ran for mayor, I believe, for what city was it that you ran for? Was it
Miami-Dade County?
What caused you to do that? And I know you got a lot of people involved, particularly people of color. Black folks came out to support you. And were you doing that expecting to win the race, or was it to really get people involved? And what was your thinking behind running for mayor?
It was a special election. The mayor had got what they would call impeached. He kind of got kicked out for doing some shady things. So then they had basically a special election. So it was a short election. It wasn't a long one that they had to, really get somebody real quick. So I jumped in the race because it was a short period of time. And when you're doing a long race, you need a lot of money. With a short race, you need the least amount of money to run in it. So my whole thing was, I know a lot of young people had registered to vote because they wanted to vote for the first black president in Barack Obama. And I said, there's a lot of young people that got these voters registration cards, and they're basically not doing nothing with it. After Barack Obama, they weren't going to polls when you look at numbers. And so I said, you know what? I can get in this race. I'm not really expecting to win. I got a chance because of name recognition. I was polling real high when I got into the race. But what ended up happening is I said to myself, it's a win-win both ways. If I lose, I still win because I create a constituent, a voters base of people. And if I win, then I'm be like, oh shit, I can't go to the strip club no more. I'm gonna be the mayor going to the strip club. So it was like, okay, I'm in a win-win situation right there. And during the time that I was running, we were polling high, and at one point I was polling like second. And then when they start parking police cars in the front of my house, I was like, oh, this shit is real. And then they started bringing me the budget, the county budget, and meeting with the manager. I mean, in Miami-Dade County is probably the third largest county in America. Shit, it's some billions in their budget. So at the end of the day, I said, okay, if I get this voting block, instead of being the king, I can always be the king maker. And so for since then, I just been, I endorse candidates. I mean, the last couple of days, because they got another mayor race, which people wanted me to run, but I didn't want to run. I just was meeting with two different candidates for the last couple of days because they know if I endorse them with the block of vote that I got, that they'll eventually win the race. Because the voting block I got is made up of young blacks, older blacks, Bahamians, Jewish people from Miami Beach, because I went to school on the beach, Hispanics, young Hispanics, real progressive group of people, and they have a tendency of voting that direction that I kind of say go in. And then, with the New Times, I do a newsletter, so they kind of basically know what I'm talking about on a weekly basis.
How important is it for young constituents? How important is it for the progressive movement, for young people to be engaged?
It's very, very important. It's very important. I mean, and it's more important. I gotta tell people, it's more important on a local level than it is. I mean, the president, yeah, that's a big deal. The local level, because everything that goes on a local level directly affects you. If you get the wrong mayor, he can run up the taxes just like the president. If you get the wrong commissioner that's responsible for your district, then he could gentrify your neighborhood. A lot of people talk about gentrification and why is it happening in our community? Well, it happened because you sat home and you didn't get involved in the political process. And for the last 4 years, I've been trying to educate people on how it works, because especially from the fundraising part of it, like we all on here, we make our money, then we pay our taxes. We want to keep our money in our pocket. At the same time, I explain to people, you shouldn't have to come out your pockets to start golf program, paint a basketball court, buy basketball uniforms when you've already paid state taxes and you pay community taxes. It's just a matter of you using your platform to go and say, hey, look, shit, I pay my taxes, y'all. I need this park redone. I need my community. I need the lights done. I need the alleyways clean. And because you've been involved and you got young people involved, and sometimes it's, hey, look, get a guy $500 check, call some of your other homies. Hey, man, give him a $500 check. And then at the end of the day, the candidate is getting the money from the community and not necessarily from the special interest groups. Because what happens to a lot of our candidates, they get the money from the contractor, the builder. The builder comes in, it's a bunch of lots in every black neighborhood that's empty. People lost their lot because they didn't pay the taxes. Those contractors come in, put the money on the candidate. Before you know it, they have those lots, and then fast forward to now, the neighborhood is gentrified, and it don't look like what it looked like when you grew up. It's more important to be involved in local politics than national politics.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't voted for the president since Obama, and that was Obama the first time. But I found it being, making sure I know who the mayor is, who that city comptroller is, who the chief of police is, the district attorney. All of that makes a world of difference, particularly when you talk about sentencing, and the level of disregard that goes on in the system, particularly when it comes to brothers and facing cases and stuff. So I completely understand where you're coming from with the local politics. That's where it's at. That's where you can most readily feel the change. Because at the national level, it's billions of dollars involved and multi-billion-dollar corporations involved. So it makes it a lot more difficult. What advice do you give young athletes about their focus and their vision? Because I'm constantly on this fence about if a guy's too young, guy may be 16 years old, you don't want to bog him down with, thinking about issues in the world, but you also don't want him to be a dummy. And you also want him to be clear about the environment that he's coming up in. So how would you shape a conversation with a young 16-year-old about being sort of politically engaged and having that understanding of the world around him, but then also focusing on, his sport, football, basketball, whatever it is that they're passionate about?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's one of the reasons why I started my youth program, Liberty City Optimists, which this year is our 30th anniversary. And we done had guys come out of our program from Chad Johnson to Levante Davis, Devontae Freeman, Duke Johnson, you name it. There's tons of athletes that came out of the program. And what we try to do at an early stage is one, teach them about family. And we always bring in mentors and people to talk to them, but keep it 100 with them about the responsibilities. And because we're a grassroots program, we explain to them how we're getting things like for instance, if I got to go to the city commission because there's a city commission budget meeting, they have, set aside, we need $6-7 million to build this gymnasium with classrooms and fitness center and everything on a park that's 28 acres. Don't even have that. So what I do is we explain to the kids how important to be involved in what I do and how I do it and how I get it done. And so we kind of walk them through it. So when it comes time for that commission meeting, we get the buses. We have about 300-400 kids in our program on a year-round basis, about 700. We get the buses, we take them down to County Hall, and we get them. Some of them want to speak, some of them don't. But then we explain to them, this is how government works. This is how we get the things that we need to get. We ain't begging nobody for nothing because it's already paid for in tax dollars. And this is how you get your elected officials involved. A little story about the commissioner for our area, he was a kid that played in the program, and he was running a race against a guy, one of the pastors, who had all the money for the special interest groups. Probably had $200,000-300,000 for a race. That's a lot of money for a race, a local commissioner's race, and our guy probably had $20,000. But what we did was we made sure every parent from all the neighborhoods, whether it's Overtown, Liberty City, Little Haiti, all those neighborhoods, and we got those people on the park who played basketball in our programs, who played football, who played all the other sports, and we got those parents, and those parents eventually ended up going, and he ended up winning. And shit, this is his second term, and he getting ready to be the county commissioner. And I mean, he beat everybody by a landslide after the first time. The second time he ran unopposed, but then you see the results of what he's done. That gymnasium that we needed to get built, he built it. It was the first gymnasium ever built in Liberty City, which is bananas. You know what I'm saying? Because we like, okay, we got all these great football players coming out of here. We need some basketball players. You know, we need to have classrooms for these kids to go into aftercare, get additional tutoring. So this one kid out of the program eventually wins the seat. He builds that gymnasium. He goes over town and built another gymnasium over town and classrooms, and redid the pool and redid these parks. Went to Little Haiti, built a whole soccer stadium, and came back to our park and built a stadium that was never touched for 40 years. And so those are the type of things that happen. And we explain to the kids as well as the parents how important it is to be involved in the political process. And so as soon as our high school kids get 18, they're right there, registering to vote. And most of them get it, some of them don't, but then the other ones kind of push the other ones along the way to get things done. So that's why our little community kind of get what we want. A lot of people jealous of us. They say, oh, y'all get everything y'all want. But again, we try to educate people about the politics because the money is there. If you go down there, voice your opinion of it, you get your taxpaying dollars going back in your community.
We talked about working with high schoolers and youth sports, but you were also involved, documented in the 30 for 30, the U with Miami. Give us a little more detail there as to exactly what went on and the role. Well, actually, I'll hold the second part for a moment. Let you at least first detail what all happened.
Well, what was going on was I'm big rapper in the country, big rapper in Miami. I see the kids at the University of Miami because I grew up a University of Miami fan. As a kid, I played football, high school, little league. I would go to the games, and when I went to the games, it was virtually empty. Stadium was empty. Miami would be getting beat, 70, 80 to nothing on a regular basis. You can roll a bowling ball in the stadium and don't hit nobody. That's how many people were at the games. When you're sorry around here, the people go to the beach. They don't have to go to the game. Then I, started getting successful, and then I noticed some of the players was, shooting up the campus because at that time Miami probably had 3 blacks on the team, and they wasn't recruiting from the inner city of Miami. They never recruited players from there because they were in a place, a little city in Miami called Coral Gables. And Coral Gables was similar to Miami Beach. They just did not want no black people over there. So they never recruited kids from the inner city of Miami. Most of them went to Florida A&M, and who didn't go to Florida A&M, they went to Booker T. Not Booker T, but that's high. So that's where your top football players would go, and then FAMU would beat everybody. I mean, if they played a Division I school, they would beat them too because they had all the top athletes. And like I say, they started recruiting them when Howard Stellenberger came along. Then the guys got on campus, started robbing the other students, shooting the place up. It was a wild, wild west. It was stupid as hell. So I'm sitting there looking at it on TV. I got all the clubs in Miami where everybody end up at the Strawberries clubs and Luke's Miami Beach and the team discos. If they were young, they went to the team discos. My team discos. If they were older, they would go to my nightclubs. So I'm like, man, hold on, man. Let me go talk to these Jets. And so I basically ended up going down there, talking to a few of them, like Jerome Brown, Winston Moss, who's coaching in the NFL now, Melvin Bratton, a couple of those guys, and Alonzo Highsmith, and say, hey, look, man, take this opportunity to basically use it to get your education. I'll get you a shot in the league. Don't go shooting the place up. Don't go robbing the students. You know, they're going to lead it because they ain't never seen no shit like that. They, you know, kid leave the door open, they go up and they take the stereo on the pawn shop, and it was a wild west down there. And so I would go and tell them boys and be like, yo, look, man, don't do that. So I kind of had a bond with them that nobody knew. And at the same time, I kind of gave them the history of Miami, how they used to get beat, how people, you know, disrespected them, how they weren't respected. And so when they started winning, I mean, we would link up every Thursday night, the whole team, and we just sit there, vibe at the club, and just create shit to do in a football game because they, you know, it was like it's the Rodney Dangerfield team. You know, hey, look, you're gonna get the ball. You're going to go run into the stands and take your helmet off and start dancing. You're going to then stand up over someone. So we just created all this wild shit every Thursday to do because nobody had no respect for them. And then they just started beating people and dancing and partying. And it was bananas. And people would come down and play before you know it, the stadium full. And the people in the stands were just as crazy. You know, the teams would come. They would come in this little place called Little Havana, and the bus get rocked. You know, they get shot at. It was crazy. And so at the end of the day, you know, some of the reporters like Dan Levitar, which is my friend now, he was a reporter for the Miami Herald at the time. And he was going to the University of Miami at the same time. So they were saying, oh, Luke paying all the players, Luke paying them to play and all that. And I never admitted that I paid anybody, which I still won't admit that I paid anybody. That'll go with me to my grave. But at the same time, he got a couple players to say, oh, he paid me off, which those guys I didn't. At the end of the day, you know, and I always tell people, because, you know, in the neighborhood where I'm from, and I'm pretty sure y'all the same neighborhood, you play good, you get a couple touchdowns, they give you a couple dollars. You know, some dude off the fence or somebody just look out for you. And those kids were really in bad shape down there. So what you had was him writing an article, and that's how he kind of blew up and got famous, because he wrote the big article on the scandal of me paying off University of Miami players. NCAA came down, did an investigation, the whole 9 yards. They ain't find nothing. They found some other stuff, some Pell Grant, illegal money getting paid, and they gave Miami some sanctions, but they never found anything that I paid anybody off. I remember like it was yesterday when the NCAA came in, they said, hey, look, we want to interview you. And so they kept calling my lawyer saying, look, I was like, I don't have to talk to y'all. This ain't no court. So, but then I just started thinking about it. I was like, I'm going to play a real game with them. I'm gonna have them boys come to my condo, and I had a bunch of naked girls in there. I said, everybody walk around naked. And when they came in, they with the suits on and shit, and they sat out, and it was a bunch of naked girls running around. I was like, yeah. I'm looking at them like, yeah, y'all really distracted. This is how we live up in here. It was crazy. Hey, so I got them. So they couldn't really focus on asking me the questions they really wanted to ask me, because there was a lot of things going on in the condo. But that was a crazy list.
But look, you also caught a lot of heat because a lot of those players that were coming from Liberty City, who you know, who are exceptional players, they would essentially be in violation if you gave them took them to dinner or gave them a meal, right? Or, bought them a pair of sneakers or helped them, pay bills for their kid, rather than, they would come to you and be ready to steal a radio out of a car. And if you gave them $100 to be able to get through the week, that's the problem.
You did that. And that was the thing, because you now got this rich area. It's like,
and these kids they're fish out of water, because they're Liberty City kids in rich Coral Gables in Miami, seeing the white kids with nice cars and all this stuff. They're superstars on a football team and can't buy a cheeseburger or feed their kids at home locally.
Yep. And again, you got the kids from the hood where we were from, and you now drop them in Carl Gables, which is similar to where UCLA campus is.
Mm.
You know, if you, I'm pretty sure you all
Yeah,
been.
yeah.
So you got them. You got looking around and they're like, hold on, and there wasn't no such thing as shit. It was a big thing if your mama had a car, because everybody was really riding the bus then. So you seeing all this beautiful stuff and all this, and people leaving their front door open and shit and purses and pocketbooks and all that. So it became crazy. But just like you say, there were a lot of kids that came from bad, disadvantaged situations, and like I said, a dude like myself, hey, look, I got it. Before you do something, man, just holler at me. You know what I'm saying? Because it ain't really worth it what you gonna do for that hot moment. A lot of players. I remember Benny Blaze. His son is actually playing for the University of Miami right now, and he told a story. He was like, "Man, my girl was pregnant, and I was up here playing ball, and I couldn't afford nothing because I ain't had no job. So I'm barely with a t-shirt on my back, and so just things like that go on. And you see them guys having those situations that was down there before the universities would be giving them money, scholarship money. That was then when they weren't giving too much money, so they didn't have no income or nothing coming in. And then they couldn't get a job because then at that period of time, it was virtually illegal for you to get a job.
Right.
If you got a job, because most of the colleges, they were giving kids jobs, and that was the form of payment. So they kind of banned that. A lot of those kids was hurting. So, again, before I let a kid go and rob somebody, then I'll just help them out in whatever way I can.
What is that message to that young kid? Like, yo, you just got to chill. How do you get him focused on education? How do you get him focused on getting something out of it, while he's there?
Man, what I tell him is like I've been coaching high school football. That's like my hobby. I just stopped playing golf because I say, okay, I'm out here for 4 hours. I could be out there, changing some kids' life for 3 hours. And so I've been doing that for almost 15 years now. And what I tell them is, you've been in Miami, like football is like the rite of passage. You start playing football at 4 years old. We call them the diaper boys. And like by the time you get to 17, you damn near got 14 years experience in playing hardcore, physical, down and dirty football. Like it's hardcore around here. Ain't nothing recreation about it at all. And so we tell the kids, okay, now you're at the end of the rainbow right here. You're in your last quarter. You either got 3 years or you got 4 years at the university. So again, now here's the game. You got 2 ways to go. You got a street way to go. You have an opportunity to use this education to then go and use this scholarship, get your education, 2 shots at the money, or be able to possibly play in the league. A lot of kids around here play in the league, so they kind of could see that window because there's so many of them get a shot around here. So I kind of use the other example of the other kids and say, look, he did it the same way. Like I'll tell him a story like Devontae Freeman, a little kid, 8 years old, and he's playing for me. I'm coaching on the park, and he grows up in the system, and he wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the best on the team. He never really started at running back on the team, but then he stayed with it. He stayed in the projects. He had 4 or 5 brothers and sisters with one mom in the house, and I always tell them to look at him. If he can do it, you can do it. It's just a matter of you focusing. When they get to the league level, I tell them, okay, now you've worked your way up to this level right here. When they're part of our program, and we'll get them and we'll bring them back and say, listen, you did all this hard work. Now you got 21 years of experience in this job, okay, in football. And at the end of the day, you're going to retire. The life expectancy of a football player that's in the league is 3 to 4 years.
Right.
So if you get lucky, you'll do 8 years, like my boy EJ or one of those other guys will get to your second contract in football. I say, so at the end of the day, you're gonna retire. And I always tell them, like the ones now, I tell them, do you realize Kobe Bryant retired at 37 years old? And they'll say, okay. So basically, look at they just giving you all your money up front. They give you all your money, what your mom and dad done already spent. So then now you can easily live and throw your money up in the air. But at the end of the day, I'm late 50s. You got to get to your late. When you're done, you're never going to make the same amount of money that you made them game checks, that signing bonus. You ain't going to make that no more for the rest of your life unless you just hit the lottery a couple times. Because ain't no business going to pay you $20 million a year or $10 million a year. That's virtually impossible to do. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. So I kind of tell them, look at it like this. You better put yourself on a fixed income. And then I tell them, look, your mama had 5 kids in the house, like my mom, 5 boys, my husband, mom, dad, janitor, mom working as a beautician. I was like, neither one of them ever made $30,000 a year. You know what I'm saying? So how much money do you really need? How much money do you really need to live off? Yeah, you want to live good, you can work hard, but at the same time, you better invest your money right. Because when your ass in football, when you get 28 or 30, you're old. You're done. And so now you got to live another 30 years not making the same amount of money. So if you don't protect your assets, then you'll find yourself in the same predicament you was when I was picking you up every day, taking you to practice. So I kind of give them that lesson when we start. You ain't gonna get 18 in no football. You're not gonna do that. You're gonna get at the most 5 or 6, but you get your money, and then now you gotta then protect it because you gotta live for the rest of your life. So they get it, and most of them, and then I talk to them about game checks. Make your investments a game check. If you ain't getting a game check out of all your investments that total up, then you're making bad investments. So you shouldn't have to touch a game check. You shouldn't have to touch a signing bonus. You get your money, if you do the right thing, live the right life, you can get endorsement money, live off of that right there, put yourself on them. And so most of the guys that come out of our program, they do good after their career is done and while they're in the league.
Oh, this is a totally different question. Why guys so fast from Miami and Florida in general?
Oh, shit.
Where do you get the speed from?
Hey, let me tell you, because the next man faster than the next man. These dudes, listen, man, these dudes, every day is a race around here.
Right, okay, all right.
Every day is it's more track going on around here. And then let me tell you, most of the girls are fast too. People don't realize it. I mean, if you look at pretty much every Olympic, you have a girl from Miami either running the quarter or the 100.
Wow.
The girls are fast. Everybody's fast. I mean, you go in Belgrade, which is about 45 minutes from here, they are even faster because them boys chase rabbits in the sugarcane fields.
Wow.
So that's their little thing. So it's a lot of games like that going on that makes them, more explosive around here. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's why I think if they really start taking basketball serious like they did back in the days, back in the days, little that most people know, Miami was a freaking basketball town, and it just switched over to football. Like not Steph Curry, the other one,
Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson dad. His dad name was Michael Thompson.
Yes. And
his dad played for Miami Jackson. And their basketball team was called the Jackson 5. And I'm telling you, you would have scalpers at the game. I remember as a young man, and so they would have to play their games at the college at the college gyms. That's how many people would come to those games, and they had rivalries similar to football. His old man them cheated a little bit because they went and got some Bahamian boys. and you know, you had the other school, Carol City. They had quite a few guys that went to. A couple of them went to the Lakers and played at Kentucky. It was a serious basketball town before it was a football town.
Circling back now to the other part of my question about the U in Miami, kind of going through all the experiences that you just laid out in terms of having to work with these athletes. I know it's such a small piece of the picture that's going on right now, but the fact that so many of these high-end collegiate athletes that ultimately become professionals, you know, typically are persons of color, typically come from families that live below the poverty line, and all of that is driven by the NCAA and their amateurism rules. I'm pretty sure I know where you're going to come down on this, but how critical do you think it is, not just for college sports, but also for the development of these young people to not have these rules in place that essentially reduce them to second-class citizens?
I mean, it's horrible. I kind of look at it almost like the plantation. When you had an SEC network and you had an ACC network, and you had a Big Ten network, and you have Notre Dame with their own network, and you have Texas with their own network, and they're getting billions and billions of dollars for their sports program from these sports networks, and then these kids can't even get a job. You know, they can't even. They just give them a couple outfits, and God forbid they blow their knee out. And then the most cynical part of it is the mere fact that what a lot of people don't know, and I always try to educate my kids before they go off to college. Look, you have a 1 year with a 1 year option. And they're like, no, coach, I got a 4-year ride. No. Ain't a 4-year ride. That shit is 1 year with a 1 year option. They can get rid of you at the end of the year, every year. That is not a guaranteed 4-year scholarship. So you have to perform. And I learned this when I was in the locker room, and Jimmy Johnson was screaming on a player because he was like, well, coach, you know, I was doing my academics. And he basically told him, you ain't here to get academics. You here to play football. And then it was like, before you know it, that kid was gone. By the next year, what happened to this dude right here? No, it's about football. And so it's kind of a plantation mentality when these guys are making all these billions of dollars and they're still living by the same rules when it was no TV contract. So before ESPN and all that, they still have those rules in place when they wasn't getting $1 billion per conference. And it's sad. It's sad that these kids can't get paid. It's sad that these kids being treated like second-class citizens. It's sad that they're using their name and likeness and making money off their name and likeness, and they're not getting paid. Yeah, they changed a couple of rules right now in some states, but that kind of went a little dead, which people gonna have to revisit because they don't know how they're gonna do that. You know, I was talking to a couple of apparel companies, and I was like, okay, well, how are you gonna pay these players in college to use their name and likeness? And they don't even know how it's gonna work because they don't understand the rules, how the rules are gonna apply to them. So it's like a plantation mentality, and that's why I like basketball more than football. As far as the kids could go in, play 1 year, get the hell up out of there. I love that. I know some people say they don't like that, but I love the fact that they could use. Now I'm using your platform to, you know, because I always tell the kids, you're a corporation. You're your own corporation. So they're able to use their corporation, display their product using their national TV and get the hell up out of there. Versus a football player. You know, he now got to get treated like shit the first 2 years, and then the third and fourth year when they need to use him, they go out there and then they kiss his butt because now he's stuck. And so that's why you see a lot of underclassmen coming out early too when they shouldn't be coming out. But that's why I respect basketball more than I do football, because football is really plantation. It's bad. They treat those players bad.
Really? I had a trainer one time tell me that in football locker rooms, like he said, it's the most segregated space he's ever seen. Like the white players are with the white players, the black players are with one side. There's a very he said it's just an unhealthy environment at times. and you can really feel the power dynamic that's going on. I expected it to be in. It's a part of what we deal with in society in general, but nonetheless, sports is always a place that I think we can find common ground. Even though I don't remember a lot of the players that were coming through Miami, I mean, we would always see, because I grew up in New Jersey, so we would always see the highlights, not necessarily the game. This was before I grew up in the '80s, so before the big TV deals, and so I would always be curious just about the environment down there, because it was always exciting and full of highlights and stuff. So it's great hearing those perspectives, from you in terms of what that environment was like and what Miami was like. My last point on this is just, where do you think, the future is going for these young athletes? Where do you think that you see them being a little bit more independent, a little bit more engaged in the world? Where do you think in terms of where it was, where it's going, where do you see the trajectory for both sports, for football, for basketball, for youth, for these young folks in general?
I see them being they are more engaged to the process now. I mean, and when you see this movement that's going on in the country right now today, is a lot of young people. It's a young people movement, and so they're really involved and they're really aware of history and how it plays, and they're like, so, because I sit there and talk to so many different young groups every day that are protesting, that have been around for a long time, and they had this shit together. There's no doubt about it. And so when you go to the athlete, the athletes know their rights right now, because some of the rules have changed in college football now, that these kids can hit the transfer portal, basically, become a free agent after any year if they're not being treated the right way, which is a beautiful thing, that they're not stuck, because it's absolutely cynical that you have you're going to give me a 1 year with a 1 year option, and then you make me stay here. So then, thank God they changed those rules. But these kids now are more involved. Like when you look at the NFL draft this year, for the first time in the history of the NFL draft, in the first round, you had 10 guys with black agents. Never happened in the world. 10 guys with black agents. And so before, most black players wouldn't touch a black agent football player, and that's why I have so much respect for basketball, because it seems like basketball guys, whether they're young or older or whatever it may be, they're more engaged. And I always tell them, and you see it when you communicate with them, the basketball kids are much more on point with what they're trying to do and what they're trying to go at with their career, versus the football. Football is just like you say, you have a locker room, you got a segregated locker room. It's a me, it's like crabs in the bucket. But now these football kids are now understanding, hey, look, I had a mom call me the other day, because my wife is an NFL agent. I had a mom call me up, and she was like, hey, look, my son plays for the University of Houston, and I want him to have a black agent. He's not going to, I got all these agents calling me up, but he's going to have a black agent. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, why do you want him to have a black agent? She was like, because, again, I'm looking at the numbers, and most of these kids in football are going, and they ended up broke. So I don't want my kid to be in the same predicament. And I see some of these black agents, like the ones Dion had and other guys had, and what some of the work that she's doing, they want that. They want somebody that looks like them coming in. So I see kids, before a kid would tell their mom, no, I'm going to go for the okie doke with one of these agents, and how they come at them. Not saying there's not no good white agents. There's some good ones. But the way I look at them, and I tell them straight up, if you do right by the kid, but if you're pimping the kid, if you're going to, kid get ready to become a millionaire in 3 months, and you giving him all this here, building up a bill, and giving him a multi-contract, and you got these addendums. These addendums are what getting these guys trapped It's not the NFL standard contract. It's all these addendums that you can put the kid on, not even letting them get some representation. It's crazy. So I see that changing. I see these kids right now. I mean, they want to sit down and they're open to hear everybody's conversation. I mean, because they're more engaged in business. They want to do business because they see other people doing business. So it's a good thing. Hope they keep it up.
Absolutely.
And Luke, man, speaking of the youth movement and how these younger people have truly gotten engaged in the Black Lives Matter movement, we all know the situation with Colin Kaepernick. What are your thoughts surrounding that and how things have evolved and just the climate of things that are going on in the country today, from the recent death of George Floyd, Roger Goodell coming out and making his, recent statements as a result of what the players came out and did. I mean, there are a lot of things going on that I'm sure you have some strong opinions about.
Yeah, I look at it. I look at it from this standpoint. I mean, we've been getting beat as African Americans for 400 years. It ain't nothing changed. Last 2 weeks ago, it was the 40th anniversary of Arthur McDuffie getting beat on his way home in Miami. That caused all the big riots here. You got riots in LA, the Watts riots. I mean, it's been happening for so many years in this country. But what I did a piece in the Miami Herald actually came out yesterday where they asked me. I look at it like this here. The government plays on the intelligence of the people. You feel me? And what ends up happening is they put the people against each other while they make all the money. You have the 1%. The government represents the 1%, whether you're in Congress or Senate, and the president. He represents the Roger Goodell group of people, Jerry Jones and all the rest of these owners and all that. That's why there ain't no surprise that these owners say the things that they say about players, and they take the approach that they take when it comes to Kaepernick. I was educating my homeboy, well, my family, because we was looking at The Last Dance. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look at this every day, but I already know how this is going to end, right? I say, they're not going to cover Craig Hodges. And I'm sitting up there like, okay, they're going to talk about Craig Hodges' story? You know what I'm saying? Which was the first Colin Kaepernick. Craig Hodges played for the Chicago Bulls on the team with Michael Jordan. He was the first Kaepernick. He was the first guy barred and blackballed out of the NBA because he was like, this is some bullshit. And he told Jordan, you need to, hey man, you selling all these sneakers, you need to put some of these businesses in the black community. And he spoke out. So they never, that's why I was real interested when y'all bring him into the fold, because that's a very, very important part of history. And so when you look at systemic racism and you look at the 1% not understanding everybody else, that's why they make these bold statements. And we, just like you say, when you look at a Drew Brees in a segregated locker room, and he never even come in contact with black people, not knowing their feelings. And he's been playing since he was 5 years old too, football. So he was playing around with some brothers all his life, but I guess he never got in the car to go on the other side of town with the brothers, whether it was in high school or whatever it may be. That is right. It's a clear example of the dysfunction of the country. But all of us who are not in the 1%, because the 1% is the trillionaires and shit, they just making all the money. They're making all the money off of this mad chaos that we're having. But now they feel threatened because they don't know if they see the movement and they see this movement being powerful. Everybody's, Kaepernick said it in a nice way. He peacefully protested. What normally happens when we stand up on a table and start screaming, everybody listen. And so while he was doing it peacefully, nobody was listening. While we were getting beat in the street and nobody was listening. The girl going home and shoot the man in the car while his baby looking, and guy getting lynched. Kid walking down the street, Trayvon Martin, and he gets shot, and and nobody goes to jail. You feel me? So then at the end of the day, all these these were, in my opinion, were peaceful protesters. So now the people have fed up with it, and it's ironic. That's why I say it's biblical, because they gave my opportunity to cure the breach when Kaepernick said what he had to say. All the other racial profiling, all the other beatings, all the other killings before this, it gave America an opportunity. And what Cap did was say, okay, we're protesting for systemic racism and racial injustice. And they didn't listen. So it's ironic that you are in a pandemic and everybody is at home right now. And when we're at home looking at a man getting the life coming out of him, the worst thing to happen in the perfect time for the perfect storm is right now. And so they're getting what they deserve right now. And what it's doing, which is so beautiful about it, it is exposing so many people. You know, it's exposing the president, he's flaming the fires, it is exposing coaches, questioning coaches on Clemson staff. You said the N-word, and now people are coming out to say, yeah, they said the N-word here. And then other coaches and other people. So other organizations, Wendy's getting Target is getting boycotted. I mean, it's shit's coming out, which is a beautiful thing, because now, you know, the power, it seems like it's going to revert back to the people. Right. If the people continue doing what they're doing. So like right now, those people, I wish, you know, it would be more powerful. I wish that they don't play no football, no basketball this year. If they do that, if they don't play no football, no basketball, and the students in the white colleges don't play no football, don't play no sports, you will be forced to look at historical black college football, basketball, and everything else. But that'd be the only thing on TV. That'd be a real movement. But more so than anything, I just hope that they don't. All the signs are saying don't play football. Right. You know, and Donald Sterling set it up for basketball early. It's set up for basketball, not to play. It's like you're forcing yourself, in my opinion, to play, because the season technically will be over right now. You know, if you don't do it and leave the TV blank like it is right now, now the power really comes back to the people. You know, and same thing with football. You know, don't do it, because now you're affecting that 1%. You're affecting their money, and you're messing with the billions and billions of dollars that they normally put on that they've already paid these teams. And now shit will change. It won't be Roger Goodell making some fake apology, which he never directly apologized. You know, it won't be no more. Okay, I'm going to go. If you look at it, they done ran out of people. They normally go get, let me go get Jay-Z. I love Jay to death. That's my guy. Let me go get Jay and bring him here. And hey, Jay, I need you to sit over here with me. And yeah, I got, you know, dude from the hood and, you know, professional black man. And y'all done played that card. Yeah. They done played that card done played. You know, you can't go get Oprah. You can't go get Gail. You can't go get Steve Harvey. You can't go get them. They didn't play them cards. Right. So those cards, you can't get Stephen A. They didn't play them cards. So they sitting up there lost, worrying about, man, if these guys don't play football, and the signs are saying don't play, and I hope they don't. If they don't play and don't lead the basketball, man, just let it ride. You know, hey, look, say you're scared of the corona and they got to pay you. Hey, look, man, I'm not playing no basketball no pandemic. I'm calling in sick. Right. Magic Johnson caught AIDS. Half of them dudes said they weren't gonna play, and they were still paying them. Right. Dudes was like, I ain't playing. No, hell no. You know what I'm saying? Which was crazy. But then it wasn't ever a thing that, we ain't gonna pay. Make them pay.
David, is that true? I mean, do NBA players still have to get paid, or do they have to have games? I thought they actually had to.
No, they getting paid. They ain't stopped no checks. They haven't stopped. They haven't stopped being paid. That's why the owners are trying to get them back to playing, because they've been getting paid and they ain't been playing. They ain't been practicing. They just been sitting at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of guys they're making that push, but there are not a lot of guys who want to go back. And there's not many of them. So I don't know how it's gonna go. They've said they're pushing, but I know there's some guys that are pushing back because they don't want to play. I'm completely in the dark about football, but I do know that the voluntary workouts right at college last week, and they had breakouts like 5, 6 guys. I think I saw at Alabama had it, 5 or 6 guys at one of the, I don't know, maybe it was South Carolina or something like that. But
yeah, Oklahoma, they had some breakouts. They had some coaches. But if there's any sport that the fluids, I mean, football, you got a uniform on.
Yeah.
You the head to toe. You got a helmet on and all this shit. And basketball ain't no helmet. Baseball, you hitting the ball, you ain't getting in contact. Basketball is constant contact in your face with no helmet, no protection, no nothing. That's to me, that's suicidal.
Rubbing up against each other for 30 minutes, for 40
Bruh, you have a shield on in football, and you already got a mask and a mouthpiece and a chin strap. You just put the mask on. Shit. Hey, basketball? Man, hold on. Dudes falling on each other.
Right.
Man, that's hardcore, yeah. In the stadium where people screaming and they're right there next to the court, people behind them. I mean, you have to move back the first 10 rows.
Yeah, they're gonna make some adjustments for sure. When they start allowing fans in the arena, they're definitely gonna make adjustments. We appreciate the time.
Oh, no doubt, man, no doubt. Jersey, what part of Jersey you from?
Teaneck, right outside of New York.
Teaneck, New Jersey.
That's where the Isley brothers live.
What's one of the top hip hop groups that come from Teaneck? Let me see if you know.
One of the top hip hop groups
that came from Teaneck, New Jersey.
Came from I have no idea. Who is it?
Divine Sound.
Oh wow. Nah. I didn't know that.
He wasn't even born then when.
Nah.
And you know their hit song was What People Do for Money.
Really?
That was their song.
Wow.
What People Do for Money. Hey, Teaneck, New Jersey, Divine Sound. Now you know.
I know. I got you.
Hey man, appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate the time, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate you, Luke.
Appreciate you, Luke.